Democratic Congressman Khanna, member of the Armed Services Committee from California. Sir, good morning to you, and thank you for your time. There is a lot of debate over this. What is your position now as we gauge the fallout from last Friday morning?
Soleimani was clearly a bad guy who had American blood on his hands, but the president should not have taken an offensive action against Iran without coming to Congress and seeking Congress's authorization. And that's what we're arguing, that the president has to come to Congress before getting us into further military conflict.
Congressman, what struck you from what we were able to just hear from the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, a short time ago, as we anticipate what Congress might learn tomorrow in that briefing?
Well, what struck me is that it's a very volatile situation. I mean, the concern is, what if Iran retaliates against American troops or American interests? We would then have to take action and have a proportionate response. And this could get us into another Middle East war where American lives are at risk and trillions of dollars are wasted. I mean, China hasn't been in a war since 1979. We're now in over 40 conflicts. The Middle East is 3.5% of the world's economy. And my concern is that America should not be getting into another war in the Middle East.
If you had a situation, as Mike Pompeo just described, if you had a situation that Ambassador O'Brien described earlier today, the National Security Advisor, where you allowed Soleimani to plan and plot, and now you're looking into deaths of many more Americans in Iraq, and if you had the chance to act and did not take it, what would be your position then?
Well, I don't believe that that was the case, and Secretary Pompeo has not said that the attack was imminent. He has not said when it was going to be taking place. He hasn't said where it would be taking place. And my view would be take out the militias who are actually going to conduct that attack on American troops. Of course, the president has the right to defend our troops and American lives, and that's
but you're offering
his highest
that
priority.
Response, with respect, sir, you're offering that response without seeing the evidence itself. And we know members of Congress will see it later today and again tomorrow.
Well, I'm open to seeing it. I think the burden of proof is on the administration. When you take action without Congress, then it's on the administration to justify that this was in self-defense. And here's my concern. Soleimani was a terrible actor. I mean, I concede he had American blood on his hand. He's killed hundreds of Americans. But does anyone think that Iran isn't going to replace one bad guy with another bad guy? My view is, how is this making us any safer?
Well, maybe that next bad guy will think twice before they start their trips from Tehran to Baghdad, to Damascus, to Beirut, down to Sana'a in Yemen. Joe Lieberman asked this question just yesterday. He said, why can't 2020 Democrats admit that Soleimani's death makes Americans safer? Go ahead and answer that, sir.
Because I don't believe it does. I think it will increase the attacks on Americans. It will increase the amount of people who are going to hate Americans, and it's going to perpetuate the cycle of violence. I believe Soleimani was a terrorist who was a bad person. That doesn't mean that the escalation of violence is what the right policy is. I believe the right policy is not to have a maximum pressure campaign and to have a ceasefire so we can focus on building our country and competing with China.
I think it goes back to what we continue to hear is the question over the intelligence behind the decision to carry out this attack. And most of those questions are coming from the Democratic Party. I wanted to share with you a word that we just got from a gaggle from General Milley on Soleimani's, on the imminent attack as it has been described from the administration and from Secretary of State Mike Pompeo a minute ago. He was planning, coordinating, and synchronizing significant combat operations against U.S. military forces in the region, and it was imminent. Do you take him at his word?
Well, the question is, what does he mean by imminent? Was it days? Was it weeks? Was it months? Where was it going to take place? And was the capture of Soleimani a better solution? Did he really have to be killed? Could we have killed some of the militias on the ground who were going to take the attacks? So I do not in any way doubt this president's right to self-defense. Obviously, the president has the right to strike if American troops are directly in harm. But I don't think that killing Soleimani was defending against an attack that was taking place that justifies not coming to Congress.
You knew what he was doing for 20 years. The Bush administration knew it. The Obama administration knew it.
And they chose not to strike him for a reason. I mean, I don't think anyone would argue that President George W. Bush was weak on the war on terror. There was a reason he and Dick Cheney decided not to attack Soleimani when they had the opportunity, because they thought it would escalate violence in the region and not be in American interests. And I think that's the case. And frankly, if the president came to Congress and said, look, Soleimani is responsible for American debts, I want to authorize that we can go after any Iranian official responsible for American debts, and if he got that authorization, it'd be one thing. But he has not done that, and that is, those of us who believe in Article 1 of the Constitution believe it's Congress's decision on whether to declare war or not.
We know that Democrats are pushing to restrain the president's military actions as we go forward, and the president plans his next move with Iran. How far do you want to see that go?
I want to make it clear that the president should not have funding for offensive strikes against Iran or Iranian officials without having authorization for Congress. And I just want to put one point in perspective for viewers there. I mean, the entire Middle East economy is 3.5% of the world economy. We're at 21%. Our competition is China. They're at 15%. I want us to be focused on winning that battle, not getting bogged down in another war in the Middle East. Frankly, the president campaigned on that.
Would you concede that there's a possibility here that things go quiet for a time?
I would be very happy if that were the scenario, and I hope that will be the scenario. I mean, I hope that there won't be an escalation of violence, and I concede that that could be a possibility, and I think every American hopes that that's the case.
You know, the president took on former President Barack Obama in a new interview, saying, knowing what we know today and knowing what has been going on, there was an opportunity before to take out Soleimani. Do you think there was any missed opportunities in the past that would have prevented Iran from getting to the point that it did?
I do not, because this was not just Barack Obama, but the reporting I've seen says that President George W. Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney also passed on the chance to take out Soleimani. And the reason they all passed is they did not want to escalate a war with Iran. And I believe the President Obama had a strategy of the JCPOA that would prevent Iran from becoming nuclear. And there weren't these incidents during the Obama administration. We didn't have protests against our embassies. We didn't have the killing of American contractors. So Americans were safe at that time.
Sir, if I could, in the minute we have left here, I want to turn from Iran to impeachment. Do you support Nancy Pelosi holding back these articles? And to what end do you believe this strategy has played out this way?
I believe she should transmit the articles at some point, but when we have a fair trial. And here's my view, which I think most people would say is fair.
Did you not have the opportunity to have a fair trial on the House side?
I think the House was fair. I think the Senate Justice Roberts, who was a Bush appointee, should make the rules. It shouldn't be Nancy Pelosi. It shouldn't be Chuck Schumer. It shouldn't be Mitch McConnell. Let Justice Roberts make the rulings of who gets to testify and how to do it.
But Justice Roberts can't do a thing until the articles are turned over. Do you support her holding on to these?
I think once Mitch McConnell makes it clear that Justice Roberts will do the rules, we should transmit the articles. But I expect her to transmit the articles. I don't think she's going to continue to hold on to them. It's obviously her decision on the timing.
If you expect that and the timing, what are you hearing? Is it days? Is it weeks?
I don't know, and that would be pure speculation. But I do think she will transmit them. I think what she wants is for people to testify. John Bolton has said he's willing to testify. I think if Mitch McConnell tomorrow were to say we're going to hear the witnesses, we would transmit them tomorrow.
But to be fair, House Democrats could have done that during their process, and you would have had a court challenge, but it would have been extended 8-10 months, maybe a year in advance. From now. So doesn't that suggest that the process was put on hyperspeed in order to go ahead and finish up the impeachment and turn it over to the Senate during a campaign year?
Well, no, I think what should have happened is John Bolton should have offered to testify a month ago. I don't know what changed. And frankly, the House should call him in to testify. I mean, if he's willing to testify in the Senate, he should testify to the House. Why don't we just get John Bolton and Mick Mulvaney to testify, hear what they have to say, and get this over with? I mean, I think that's the sticking point. And if the president hasn't done anything wrong, he should be okay with having...
Just a last point on this, then.
Yeah.
The longer she holds the articles, how much damage does that do to the Democratic Party?
I think the longer this goes on, it's hurting the country. I mean, that's my concern. My concern is we need to be unified as a country. Let's get this over with, but let's have a fair process. And I don't think anyone would say I'm biased to say that Chief Justice Roberts, who was a Republican appointee, should set the rules. And if he sets the rules, you won't hear me objecting to any of his evidentiary rulings.
All right, Congressman Khanna, appreciate your time this
Thank you,
morning,
sir.
sir. Thank you.